Okay, so for this one, there's a few different ways to do it. To me, the easiest one is graphing, plus it gets you better at graphing, which isn't a bad thing in and of itself. So I will show it that way. The first thing we want to do to graph this is, well, there's two things. We need to figure out our x-intercepts and then our leading term. Because our leading term is going to give us the leading coefficient and the degree of the polynomial, and that's going to tell us the shape. So this is like where we're trying to figure out, is it positive even, positive odd, negative even, negative odd. So if I FOILed all this out, and we certainly don't want to, but if I did, it would come out to -3 in front because of that -3, and I would have x to the 4th times x to the 5th times x to the 5th. So that would give me 5, 10, 14 x's. So if I did FOIL it, it would come out to -3x to the 14th would be our first term, and that is negative and even. And so that means that this graph is going to come in from the bottom. It's going to do some stuff in the middle. We don't quite know what yet. That'll be the intercepts. But it's going to come back out the bottom as well. So we're going to come in from negative infinity and go back out to negative infinity when we graph this. So then let's look at the intercepts. We're going to have an intercept at -3, and that's to an even power, and then like x squared. Even powers bounce, so that's going to be a bounce. And we're going to have x equals -2, and that's to an odd power, so that's going to cross. And x equals 5, which is also to an odd power, so it's going to cross. And after that, we just got to get a graph drawn. And we're going to be looking for the places where the graph is less than 0, in other words, where it is below the x-axis. So if this is greater than 0, we would want the parts that are above, because that's for those values. If I put an x and it comes out up here, then that's a positive value. But if I put an x and it comes down here, then that would be a negative value. And we want the negative ones because those are going to be less than 0. And I'm not going to try to draw any scale on this. I mostly just want to make it easy to read. So I'm going to space those out a little bit. And then again, not really worrying about scale. So this is going to come in from the bottom, and we're supposed to bounce off a -3. So our graph is coming in from negative infinity, we're bouncing off of -3. And then I'm going to have some kind of turning point because I have another intercept here at -2. Don't worry about how high or how low this is. You don't know that math until calculus, and right now we're just trying to get where's the graph below the x-axis and where is it above, because that's all we're trying to solve in terms of this less than or 0. So we'll come back, we'll do a little turning point, we're going to cross on the -2, and then there's some intercept up here. Again, we don't care where because we're just doing the inequality, and then we got to come back and cross on 5. And so this came out the right way. If you squint, it kind of looks like this in terms of the end behavior. And then for the inequality piece, we're looking for the less thans. So the part we don't want is in here. And that's because all of this graph is positive between -2 and 5. It's above. If I put any of those values in for this x, it's going to come out a positive value, which wouldn't be less than 0. So if it was greater than, that would be perfect, but we want all the negative regions. So those are going to be here, and that goes up, pretend like that's touching right there. There's another one in here, but this is intersecting with the axis, so we got to treat that point a little bit special. And then all this would be positive, and then out here would be, oops, not right, positive, negative. Again, it's below the axis. So if this had an equals, I would have solid dots on all of those zeros. This does not have an equals, so that means I need open dots on all these endpoints. And then what I'm going to do is just draw on a line graph here to help me with filling out the interval notation. So this is negative with an open dot right here, so that piece counts. This is negative, it's below the axis, so in between those 2 points counts. Again, the endpoints don't count because there's no equals, and this is also negative out here as in it's below the axis. So all of this would count. So now if I try to write those x values in interval notation, I get from negative infinity up to -3, but then I have to jump over -3 itself because it's excluded because that would make it equal 0, so union -3 to 2 oops, -2, pardon, union, and then there's this gap, and we pick